Well, welcome everybody. Sorry for the late start. We had a little bit of a Zoom glitch, and hopefully people will continue to join. We're going to jump right into our video because we have today Dr. Shalu Ramchandani, myself, Allison Kelly Hedgepath for the Lown group, and we took a field trip last Sunday to the Jarvis Kitchen Appliance Showroom, generously donated by one of our grateful patients and kind patients, and filmed by his son, Tony Jarvis. So we're going to show a 25-minute video, and please feel free during the video to put questions in the chat. And as soon as the video is over, we're going to come back and have a conversation. So today we're going to be talking about bringing joy back to the kitchen while adding years to your life.
Hi everyone, I'm Shalu Ramchandani. I'm an internal medicine physician specializing in weight management. I'm also a certified culinary coach. And I'm here today with Doctors Darrell Lee Lewis and Allison Kelly Hedgepath. We are at the Jarvis Appliance Showroom in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And we are excited because we're going to be spending the next hour talking about our favorite topic, which is food. This year has been an extremely tough year, wouldn't you agree, for our patients?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we have definitely seen people gaining a lot of weight, a lot of chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure. And we know that food is the best medicine, and nutrition, focusing on our nutrition is the single best way that we can promote health and prevent disease, right? So when I was speaking with Dara and Allison, we had talked about how it's been stressful for patients really to figure out how they're going to cook multiple meals throughout their week and eat healthy.
Yep.
So certainly this year we saw a lot of Uber Eats, DoorDash, potato chips, snacks. Yeah. So
for all of us, doctors,
and then
families, right?
Families, absolutely, and then just preparing 3 meals. So what we're hoping to do in this next hour is go over some simple strategies of how you can plan for the week and make it healthy and fun.
Yes, awesome. So the kitchen looks beautiful. What are we going to be preparing today?
So we have a few things planned out today. So when I'm thinking about my recipes for the week, I'm always thinking about colors, because the more colors you have, obviously you're getting all your nutrients and your vitamins and minerals, and thinking about what protein sources. So what we're going to be focusing on today is a couple of protein sources we have. We have the garbanzo beans, and then we have
chickpeas, right?
That's right. That's right. So we have chickpeas there, and then we also have some tofu there, and then we have a big variety of vegetables, including our kale, broccoli, carrots. We have scallions, red peppers, cranberries, and then cilantro. And then, of course, the beautiful cherry tomatoes with lots of phytonutrients. So what we're going to be trying to do today is prepare for the week ahead. We're going to have the garbanzo beans, or the chickpeas, are going to be cooking in the Instant Pot for a couple of different recipes. We can use them either in our salad or in our pasta, or we can make a batch for hummus or even falafel. And then we are going to work on making one pan sheet with tofu and broccoli. And then we're going to do a Mediterranean salad bowl that's going to be super colorful with an avocado orange dressing. And then this is one of our staple ingredients. So we'll talk a little bit about what staples go into our pantry, but quinoa is obviously a wonderful grain which can be stored in your pantry for months. And it's very easy to cook, and it can be used in a variety of recipes. So we're going to be using the quinoa for our Mediterranean salad bowl. And and then lastly, we're going to do the turnips and the rutabaga roasted in the oven for our snacks during the course of the week. So we're not going to be snacking on potato chips.
Who cooks with rutabagas? This is awesome.
Yeah, and it's sweet, and once we roast it, it's going to be nicely caramelized. And it's going to be quite tasty.
Wow, so exciting. So you mentioned about planning ahead. which this is where I need the most help. So I'm
Yes.
ready to be taking notes. How do you approach this for the week?
So my thing for the week, and I will share with you one of my favorite, so obviously I'm on the chef coaching team at the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine on faculty, and we have a wonderful website with lots of resources. And I will share that with the group. So when I am thinking about my week ahead, I typically will go to the website, pick out some recipes, preferably recipes with some overlapping ingredients, so I'm not buying too many different things. And then once a week, typically Sunday for me, is I'll spend 3 minutes looking over the recipes, organizing what I need to buy, and then they have my shopping list on my phone ready to go. So when I'm at the supermarket, it's pretty easy. And then I have my staples always in my pantry, so I don't always have to keep buying the staple ingredients.
Oh, that's great. 3 minutes. You had
3 minutes, yes,
That's about what
exactly.
we've got on a Sunday.
And it takes away all the stress during the course of the week. And then whatever you're making, what we're going to go talk about is how we're going to repurpose it for other dishes throughout the week, what we're going to do with leftovers. And then this arrangement right here, this is in French called mise en place, which is really having everything in its place. And it does look very pretty, but it also is organized, because this takes away the clutter and that feeling, that overwhelming feeling that sometimes people will experience when they are cooking.
You know, this is more than 3 minutes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, the 3 minutes is just the organizing what you're going to make and having your recipe list ready to go. This does take a good amount of preparation. However, what you'll notice is that, well, as you'll see later on, is that we're going to use the broccoli for a couple of different dishes. We're going to use the scallions for 2 different dishes, as well as the cilantro we're going to use for a couple of different dishes. So what's really nice about this, and the garlic too, and what's really nice about this is when you're preparing, it doesn't take very long to crush 5 cloves of garlic versus 1 clove of garlic. And I always do make extra, because whatever I don't use today, I can put it in a container, store it either in the fridge or the freezer, depending on what the ingredient is, for use later in the week, which makes obviously a lot more efficient process.
And then you can also buy in the store pre-chopped, pre-cleaned
Absolutely.
kale, broccoli,
I'm
carrots.
all about convenience.
Me too.
Yeah, the more convenient, the better it is. The shredded carrots, I certainly didn't shred that myself. So, but yeah, so it does take at least a good half hour of maybe of chopping, depending on how much you're going to do. But this is where you get your family involved and have some fun in the kitchen. It doesn't have to be a task that you have to do by yourself. If your children are old enough, they can certainly help you cut up some of the broccoli heads. So make it fun. So one of the things that our patients always tell us is time, how there isn't enough time in a week to make all these wonderful things. And I agree with that. However, when you learn to do some batch cooking, it makes your life a lot easier. So today we're going to be batch cooking our garbanzo beans, which we're going to use for several recipes throughout the week. We don't have to just make a half a cup of the garbanzo beans for the hummus that I plan to make for the snack, but we can use some of the garbanzo beans for in your salad for the course of the week, but we can also throw it in your pasta. And maybe you'll even freeze some for use later on. So all we're going to do while we are cooking other things, we're going to get this going, because this is going to take the longest. So all I'm doing here is pressure cooking the garbanzo beans in the Instant Pot. And this is one of those strategies where you can just let the cooking happen while you're not watching. And that you can do when you're working too, have that turned on, because you're planning ahead. So I'm just doing 2 cups of garbanzo beans with 8 cups of water. So we'll get this going,
That's all you have to do.
and that's it.
So what if someone doesn't have an Instant Pot? I love my Instant Pot, and
Yeah.
I actually use it all the time.
I do love my Instant Pot too, but you're right. There's a lot of people who don't own one. And what you can do is, if you're thinking about doing garbanzo beans, maybe you'll just start out with just soaking. So while you're cooking all your other things, you might even just soak the garbanzo beans for overnight and then boil them the next day. However, you can also use canned garbanzo beans. That's one of those staples that I have in my pantry. One of the recipes that we're going to do today is a crispy baked tofu with broccoli. And tofu, for those of you who have not bought it before, is typically comes in with water. And in order to get that real crispiness in the oven, you want to dry it sufficiently. And the best way to do that, you could either use dish towels or you could use paper towels and place it right over the tofu, and then just put something heavy over that so it has a chance to dry. And then now we'll just keep this to the side, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Can you walk us through cooking the quinoa?
Absolutely, Allison. So with the quinoa, you typically want to double the amount of water to the cups of quinoa. So if you're making 1 cup of quinoa, that's 2 cups of water. And I find it's easier to cook than rice, personally. And it takes probably a good about 20 minutes or so to make it. But again, like I said, to save time, you want to batch cook because you are going to have it for hopefully multiple meals throughout the week. And you can easily store this in your freezer if you're not going to use it that particular week. What I love about the quinoa is that it has a very low glycemic index. And it is very high in protein and fiber.
Yes.
So it's very satiating.
I have heard you can use quinoa for breakfast cereal too, sort of maple syrup.
Absolutely.
Oh, I have to try
Go
that.
sweet
Absolutely,
with it,
yeah.
or savory. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
versatile.
It is versatile. Yeah, you can use that for breakfast, for over your salad, with your entree. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing that's going to take the longest to prepare on the longer side is our roasting of our vegetables. So we have the turnips here, which are nice and white, and then these are the rutabaga that is like a little creamy yellow. And what we're going to do is just salt and pepper them, and then toss them with olive oil. And as simple as that, and then pop them into the oven. So one of the things that we're gonna do is minimize how much salt we're using, because again, we have other strategies for flavoring our food. So for those of people who are watching their salt intake, we have elevated blood pressure. And then same thing with the olive oil. I try to minimize how much olive oil we use in our food, and really just give it a nice stir until they're well coated.
So you use olive oil.
Yes.
What do you think is the healthiest oil to use for cooking?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of olive oil, as you know, for the Mediterranean eating pattern. Olive oil is what's recommended as the healthier oil. So depending on what I'm doing for cooking, if I am just lightly sauteing, olive oil is perfectly fine. But if I am going to be doing high heat, then you want to probably use a more neutral oil with a high smoking point, like canola oil.
Or avocado oil?
Or avocado oil, absolutely, yeah. But for something like, for roasting, olive oil is perfectly fine, and you'll get the health benefits as well. So maybe what we'll do is we'll put the rutabaga on a different tray so they cook more efficiently this way. There you go. Vegetables are wonderful to snack on. So when you are hungry in that mid-afternoon and you're looking for something to munch on, this is a very high fiber, low calorie snack. And this can be refrigerated, so it tastes great when it's cold, and it can be great in your refrigerator for up to 5 days. So the next thing we're going to prepare now is our tofu. It should be dried. I think it's been here about 15 minutes or so. So let's see here.
It shrank.
It did, yeah. Ideally, you'd probably want to dry it a little bit more, but that's okay. I think for our purposes today, we can just go ahead and get going. So we're just going to cut this up evenly into cubes. So maybe, there we go. And then,
I grew up eating tofu, but a lot of people didn't. But I know that even my 12-year-old likes it, and your 12-year-old likes it.
my 12-year-old is coerced into eating it, but he has since grown to like it. I'll be completely honest.
I think it's so easy to flavor and to make in so many different ways, and it's so healthy. I love it. But
Yeah,
people just need to get over that kind of,
the consistency.
yes.
Yeah, I agree. And you can use this as a snack as well, and it can be grilled, so you can get past that consistency. So, and we're going to make it nice and crispy today. So the cornstarch is going to be really helpful for that. So what we're going to do is put about a tablespoon of our tamari, and this is really just soy sauce, and it's gluten-free. And then I'm going to use a little bit of maple syrup, and you can use honey or whatever, and you don't even have to use any sugar. And then again, olive oil is kind of optional as well, but just a touch. And then we're just going to whisk all of this together and then put our tofu directly until they're evenly coated. All right, so once your tofu is nice, evenly coated with your marinade, then we're going to just drop in the cornstarch. And this is, you only need about a tablespoon worth of the cornstarch. And we're just going to evenly coat all the surfaces with the cornstarch, because this is what's going to help us get our tofu nice and crispy when it's baked. Okay, just until you no longer are seeing all the white powder. We're gonna do a 1 pan roasting. So what we're gonna do is roast our tofu along with the broccoli, again, to save some time, but as well as how much you're gonna clean up after.
That's important.
We're going to roast the broccoli alongside with our tofu. So we'll put half of the broccoli in this bowl. And all it really needs is a little bit of salt, pepper, olive oil, and garlic. And again, if you want to skimp out on the salt, by all means, get your hands in there and massage all the florets so they're nicely coated. I think they're nicely coated.
Okay,
Looks
so
ready to go.
again, it looks like it's single file and you've kind of left a little room. So is that,
Yes,
you don't want
so
overcrowding
we just
again.
don't overcrowding, and this way it's much more efficient in terms of the cooking process. And yeah, and this is ready to go into the oven for another,
Looks
for
beautiful.
30 minutes,
400 degrees.
400 degrees, yeah. All right, so while we have our stuff in the oven, we've got our tofu going, we have our vegetables going. We're now going to move on to making the Mediterranean bowl because our quinoa is almost ready. So what we have going back in the skillet is sauteing a little bit of broccoli with some kale, and that process is literally only going to take us 5 minutes. And all we've done is put a couple of tablespoons of water, and then we're going to wait until the color of that bright green color in the broccoli comes out, and the kale starts to wilt, and that process, again, only a couple of minutes, and then we'll be ready to go and put our salad together.
So you're doing that just with water,
Just-
no oil at all?
Yeah. All right, so we are now ready to make a salad dressing. What we're going to do today is make an avocado orange dressing, which is absolutely delicious. And this is my second best friend after the Instant Pot, which is the Vitamix. But of course, you can really use any blender. And this is just a 1 garlic clove crushed. We have a 1/4 cup of orange juice. And then we have a tablespoon of orange zest. And then we have 1 avocado, peeled and pitted. And then we have a tablespoon of lemon juice. And then we have a cup of cilantro.
Wow.
Yeah. And what I do want to point out is that I am definitely somebody who tries not to waste any food. So when I was taking out the stems from my cilantro, I keep them to the side, and this is going to be later used to make a stock. And we're just going to go ahead and blend this. Okay. So we're just going to mix it. And then this is our avocado orange dressing, and you'll see that this is pretty thick, and you don't really want it to be any lighter than this. So there's really no need to add any water. It's smooth. And what I'm also going to do is add a little dash of salt and pepper to taste. And this can be, again, in your refrigerator for at least 5 days.
So the avocado doesn't turn brown?
You know, it does, but you can just stir it and it still tastes really good for at least several days. Probably after 5 days, I probably would not keep it in the refrigerator.
Oh, that looks like something you could use in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so this doesn't have to be just for your salad. You can certainly even put it on a cracker as a snack. All right, so we are now in our final stages. We're going to put our Mediterranean salad bowl together. So we're going to use some of the quinoa for our salad. We do want the quinoa to cool before it goes into the bowl. However, just because of time constraints, I'm just going to go ahead and get this going. And then I'm going to have a couple of containers. So I'm going to store some of this. I'm going to freeze some of it and then leave some of it in the refrigerator for my meal later this week. And then we have a lot of different colors here. So we're going to put in some cherry tomatoes. And we're going to put in some red peppers. And what's nice about these red peppers is, again, I made a lot because during the course of the week, the plan is to add that to my omelet. And same thing with the scallions. I love scallions in my omelet. And then we have the shredded carrots. So here we go. And then we're going to add the sauteed vegetables. We have our kale and broccoli. This is looking very, very colorful. And then we're going to give it our final touches, which is going to be some cranberries. And then the dressing is going to really depend on how creamy you like things to be. So, great. And then lastly, we're going to put the dressing, and it does not have to be a wet salad. It is really just to coat it sufficiently for the beautiful flavors in the dressing. So.
Oh, what are you doing now?
Oh, so I'm just gonna garnish with a little pine nuts, and you can toast these if you like, but you know, we didn't toast them today, but that's fine. But voila. And, okay.
Awesome. And if we didn't have pine nuts, we might use almonds or walnuts or?
Yeah, you can use any nuts that you like. You can put some caramelized walnuts, that would be tasty too. Pistachios are always really yum.
Pistachios?
Yeah. Okay, so now the vegetables are roasted. Our tofu has been baked and we're ready to plate it. So we're just gonna plate this right along with the broccoli.
It did get crispy.
Yeah, it did come out nice crispy. And there's gonna be some sweetness because we added a little bit of maple syrup to that.
So good.
And then we can just garnish that with our scallions. Now you can also prepare a peanut sauce or purchase one and use that as your dipping sauce. So now the roasted vegetables are done, and we are just going to sprinkle a little bit of sumac on these, and these are good to go. once they've cooled down, we're gonna refrigerate it for our snack later this week.
Can we just show the sumac
Oh, absolutely.
to the camera?
So you can pick up ground sumac really at any grocery store. I just happen to have had packets from a restaurant. So we have all our final products. We have our roasted vegetables that we're going to be snacking on throughout the week, and a nice low-calorie, delicious snack. And then our quinoa we're going to repurpose, and we can really do anything with the quinoa. It's so versatile, like Dara said. We can use it for breakfast. We can absolutely even maybe make a stir fry out of it later this week. And then our salad, of course, this is complete on its own. However, if wanted, you could still add some chickpeas on top of this, or you can use the chickpeas. I'm going to use it later this week to make a hummus, because that's another great snack that you can have with your carrots or your celery sticks. This is going to be for dinner, the tofu and the broccoli. And then we still have a lot of prepped vegetables that we can use throughout the week to make other creations. So remember, creativity is a wonderful asset, and it is so helpful even for our stress management. So be creative, make a different salad using some of the prepped vegetables, voila. I also want to thank Jarvis Appliance for letting us use their absolutely wonderful kitchen today. And of course, I want to thank Dara and Allison for having me here. This was really fun.
So much fun for us.
So fun and so yummy.
And
So
yeah, I
delicious.
can't wait to dig in.
Delicious.
Yum. That dressing's really good.
All right. Thanks. Okay, so this is so much fun. This was bringing back really good memories of very delicious food. And I'll say I brought those rutabagas home to my family, and they were very popular. I admit to having been skeptical about rutabagas, but they are delicious and a good alternative to potato chips. So let's see, we've got a bunch of questions coming in, and we had some in the email. So before we get into the new ones, I'm going to talk about the email ones. So Shalu, somebody wanted to know if you could just explain a little bit about how to cook those chickpeas. So
yes, great question. Okay, so if you have a chance to pre-soak them, and if you're using an Instant Pot, it is a lot faster, but oftentimes I'm not that prepared to pre-soak. And what's nice about the Instant Pot is that you can cook the chickpeas without pre-soaking. So if you have a cup of chickpeas, generally the ratio is like 3 cups of water to a cup of the chickpeas. And then on the Instant Pot, what's nice is that they have the settings, which is like the bean setting. So you could just click on the bean setting, or on a high pressure setting for if they're unsoaked for like 40 minutes. Should be good.
perfect. So easy. So that's awesome. And then someone else was saying they're a little intimidated by avocados, how to cut them, peel them, and what if you don't want to use a whole one? Can you talk a little bit about avocados? Because they're so rich in fiber. They have magnesium, potassium. They're a great healthy fat.
Yeah, they are. No, I think the easiest way to probably cut an avocado, and generally you don't need to eat an entire avocado, and I always do end up saving a half of it for the following day. And what you could do is if you just cut it right in the middle, the pit is pretty big. So you will hit it with, depending on the size of the knife that you're using. And it, I guess the best way to describe it is, I wish I had my avocado right now, is it comes off pretty easily, the skin, once it's cut in the middle. So once the skin is off, you could even slice the avocado, the avocado, and it shaves, it smooths basically right off the pit into your bowl pretty easily. And then what I do to keep it from browning overnight, because if you're not going to eat the entire thing and have leftovers, I would just put some lemon on it to keep that color rich.
Perfect.
Till you use it again.
But a word of warning to beginners is that one of the leading emergency room visits for kitchen mishaps is avocados, because I think people hold it in their hand and take a sharp knife and cut it this way. And if you slip, you can cut yourself. So be careful with the avocado.
Good point, Dara.
And someone is pointing out that Dean Ornish, who is a cardiologist who has written the book about how to reverse heart disease with diet, recommends against avocados. Most cardiologists, including myself, think avocados are an excellent part of a healthy diet. What's your thought?
I agree with you, Dara. I think avocados are a wonderful source of, good fats, monounsaturated fats. So and also for satiety, I feel like they're very satiating, and I don't really see a good reason to exclude them from our diet. So I'll have to, and I read Dean's books, but I don't specifically remember the recommendation against the avocado.
I think he was just a super low fat in general, which I think has really, that was in the 70s and 80s. That's really not the way we're thinking anymore. I think that, if you think about every calorie that you eat is either a fat, a carbohydrate, or a protein. If you cut way, way down on fat, you're filling your diet with either more protein than you need or more carbs than you need. And so the body wants a balance. So I think that they are high in calories, but they're high in healthy fats. So I agree. I think there's definitely a place.
And that's why I think in moderation, if you're going to eat avocado, certainly you can get away with having a half on your toast or a quarter even in your omelet.
Yeah, great. And then someone else had asked about air frying and grilling, which unfortunately we didn't get to in this installment. Have you ever air fried tofu? I've heard that that's a really nice way to get it crispy.
I personally have not, but I have air fried other things, and I do love my air fryer, except I have a very old one, so it's massive. But generally, yes, I do love using the air fryer for other things like cauliflower. It is delicious.
So I don't really understand air fryers. It's just that you toss it with oil and then it's sort of a very dry, high heat.
You don't even have to. Yeah, you can actually even don't use any oil, or you can use minimal oil if you want to, but it basically takes away from the deep frying. So if you're using a frying pan and you're going to fry your vegetables in the oil, potentially you're using a lot more oil. And to minimize how much oil you're going to be using, you could use the air fryer. And it is really just as delicious.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll ask one more question, then Allison, I'm going to turn it over to you. But someone wants to know if there's such a thing as sugar-free cranberries. I think they'd be really sour if you had dried cranberries that weren't sweetened.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of sugar in those dried cranberries.
No, there aren't. And I have not come across sugar-free cranberries. And if anyone else has in the audience, please do chime in. Yeah.
So, while we're talking about all these little tidbits, I think it's nice to just approach this, from the bird's eye view, right? And, I think if you go through and you pick out all the cranberries in your salad and that's what you eat, which is what my 7-year-old would do, then you've taken something healthy and you've made it a big sugar load, right? But I think with, your Mediterranean bowl and this whole approach is really to try to be balanced, in our approach. Now, depending on what your specific health problem is, you might need to be a little more stringent. If you're a diabetic and your blood sugar is not controlled, right, then maybe adding the cranberries is not going to be the best choice for you. But I think if we're just striving to have a lot of variety in our diet and unhealthy foods, like we were just trying to give really, universal examples of, what a colorful plate might be, and hopefully help inspire people to not just do what they're used to, but expand that comfort zone. So with that in mind, I think there's so many interesting things to talk about with seasoning. So I have never been exposed to the sumac, which has a very tangy flavor, maybe similar to like citrus or lemon. I expected it was going to be like paprika, which I'm a little more familiar with. So what's your approach, if we're trying to avoid adding salt and sugar, right? What's your approach to seasonings and dressings, and how do you mix it up week to week?
Yeah, so generally I would say I definitely am a big fan of trying things. So like I said earlier, being creative, right? So any sort of herbs and spices you can experiment with, right? And you'll learn from trying them that maybe this is not something that you absolutely love in your vegetable. But certainly sumac was a new one for me too this year. And I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. Lemon is just my go-to always for salt replacement. So anytime I'm trying to avoid excess sodium, lemon works really great. But really just any sort of herbs, right? If you can garnish your food with like a scallions like we did, or cilantro, parsley, just giving that extra flavor really sort of takes away the need to add a lot of salt to your food. So that's, and then I'd say just experiment because you'll be surprised.
So I will say, if anybody, was brave enough to purchase ingredients and is trying this, the cilantro with the avocado, I really enjoyed that dressing. And, I use a lot of avocados when I cook, but I hadn't added that much cilantro. So I think that is it's a good reminder for all of us to really, mix things up from the way that we're doing it, in terms of health. The other thing that you did such a great job of is having everything prepped, right? And that table was just so beautiful with all those colors, right? And all those colors are really the vitamins and micronutrients, right? That we really want to make sure that we're getting, because there's not a good source to get everything, right? So just reminding everybody that the more diverse your plate is and the more you switch it up week to week, you're really getting a lot of micronutrients that you might not get, every day, especially if you're eating the same thing day in, day out.
No, I absolutely agree, Allison. So my strategy when I go to the grocery store is actually to find colors. So when I'm in the fresh vegetable aisles, I'm always looking at what different colors I can buy for the week. And I think that's such a nice strategy because you really are getting the variety of your, like you said, your micronutrients when you're expanding that repertoire. And even I think something fun to play with every day is just how many colors did I get today? And just having that balance is super helpful. And in, just with the Mediterranean eating pattern, we focused a lot on the plant-based products in our demo, which all tend to be very low caloric, but definitely high in fiber and also packed with nutrients. But certainly you could do any sort of added either fish or chicken or anything else to this bowl. So for people who do enjoy that, Dr. Michelle Hauser has started a culinary medicine curriculum for med schools. And she talks about this protein flip, where, in our society, we spend so much energy on getting enough protein in our diet. And I think as a society, we get way too much protein. And if you keep in mind, really, protein does provide your building blocks, right? You has your amino acids, but eventually all the protein that you consume that your body does not need for the building blocks is still gonna get converted over to glucose. So when we talk about having a plate with a big portion of the protein, you're not necessarily doing a great advantage to your body, right? So a protein flip would be on that Mediterranean bowl is adding a small garnish of protein like your shrimps or a piece of chicken. But it doesn't have to be a massive amount, because keep in mind that in that bowl, there was already quite a bit of protein. There's not a tremendous amount of protein in some of these vegetables like the broccoli and the kale, but there is definitely some protein in your vegetables as well. But again, the chickpeas over there was an excellent source of the protein, but also with lots of fiber.
Yeah, I grew up in a family, my dad was Chinese, and we used to have for dinner one pork chop, cut up into a stir fry, and we would all have that. And I remember being so surprised when I went to a friend's house and we each got our own pork chop. I was like, that is so much meat. But I think in moderation, animal protein has a really nice place in a very healthy diet.
Yeah, I think everything in moderation, right, Dara?
Yes, right? Avocados and cheese and all those, salt.
And I think this is another good example too, where we're trying to make really healthy generalizations. If people have specific health problems, right, you might be trying to add more protein to every meal you're eating, right? I do have a number of patients that have had a lifetime of, great vegetables and very little protein. And, we're dealing with some musculoskeletal issues that we are trying to really bulk up their muscle mass, right? So there might be reasons that we vary from this. And so I just want everybody, to hear what we're saying, but apply the specifics with what, you speak to Dara and I about, or your other doctors. And I also think too that focusing on the healthy proteins gives people options too, because, I feel like, my kids are so sick of me cooking salmon, right? So to introduce tofu or tempeh, right, or other variations that are a good source of protein, I think, breaking your normal cycle it's fun to experiment. So we talked a little about tofu, and that dish you said, you could easily substitute in salmon, right, or lean chicken, right? Mm-hmm. And then we didn't talk a lot about what tofu actually is, or its cousin tempeh, both of which are non-animal protein sources. Do you want to maybe set the stage for if people don't?
Yeah. So tofu is obviously a plant-based protein from soy, it's packed with nutrients, and I find in terms of caloric density, again, it's a lot less than having sort of an animal protein. So it is a nice replacement for those who are trying to avoid the animal protein. And what else? I mean, it's super versatile, right? We can use it in our snacks and stir fries, soups,
similar to how you might use cube chicken, right? Or
same, yeah.
Fish, right? That you could substitute it into a recipe.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I have to say, one of the other benefits of having more tofu in your diet might be for women who are going through sort of perimenopause, menopause, when you're experiencing hot flashes. It's probably not a bad idea to be adding a little bit of tofu in your diet, which is definitely been shown to help with reducing hot flashes as well.
Because soy has some estrogenic properties.
Properties, right.
And unless you had gobs and gobs of soy, it's not dangerous in terms of breast health.
Breast
I know
cancer,
there used to be a concern, but that is no longer.
Yeah. And along the same lines, edamame, soybean, again, is another great source as well, which is something else that I have in my freezer all the time, because that's another easy one that you can throw into your salad as another source of protein.
And adds to the color of the plate. So
that's right.
That's great to always have that on hand. Yeah, definitely.
And what about tempeh?
Yeah, I want to say, Allison, you probably use tempeh a lot more than I have.
So tempeh is also soybean based that's fermented, and it has a different texture compared to tofu. It's drier, and it has a very nutty flavor. So I really like it, and my kids like it. Sometimes I roast it similar to how we roasted the rutabaga, and just have that around for snacks, because you don't really need to add much to it for seasoning. But I think it's, it's fun to experiment with it.
I would say I would definitely have to, try that next. Introduce tempeh in our family.
Yeah. There's a question here about organic, and this is such a great question. And I know we've talked in previous webinars, there's something called the Dirty Dozen, the Clean 15, and that's easily Googleable. If you Google Dirty Dozen Clean 15, about which fruits and vegetables tend to have more pesticide residues than others, and if certain ones are generally grown without a lot of pesticides. So my husband was trained as an organic farmer, and he always makes fun of me for buying everything organic, because he tells me that some crops you just don't need pesticides because they have sort of naturally occurring pesticides and they're bug resistant, and other ones tend to be really heavily sprayed. So someone is asking, is there a general rule about which ones you should get organic or not? And certainly the ones with a peel, like a banana and orange, where the pesticide would typically be on the peel, you peel it, that's not an issue.
Fine, right.
But things like berries, cherries, blueberries, really those tend to have a lot of pesticide residues.
True. And you're absolutely right. So I do also refer to that list of Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. But you're absolutely right. If you're going to peel something, you're fine. But if you're going to eat like the grapes and berries, I generally would try to prefer to get the organic ones.
Yeah. I usually, I keep my cell phone obviously in a supermarket, and if I'm at Trader Joe's and I'm trying to find scallions and they don't have it organic, I just Google, do scallions need to be organic? And you can find all this so easily online, and some of them are surprising and some of them are obvious, but things that you don't need to buy organic, for example, would be avocados, onions, eggplant, who knew, cauliflower. So those are all on the clean 15, where it doesn't really matter if you buy it conventional or organic. And generally speaking, I don't know if you'd agree, but eating fruits and vegetables is better than, even if they're not organic, better than not.
Right, it's still better than having processed foods for snacks, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just rinse well. And I think there's a question about GMO, which is, genetically modified, which is the same idea, because, usually when things are genetically modified, it's to avoid, so that they withstand the growing season when you use pesticides. Right. So that kind of goes hand in hand. So I think if you can choose GMO, do it.
Definitely.
Right? If you can't, make your best healthy choice. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's another question about the peanut sauce. I'll be happy to send you a recipe with oil and without oil. I can maybe share it with Allie, and then
peanut sauce.
Yeah.
Delicious and great for dipping tofu or broccoli or cauliflower. So delicious. Everything tastes better with peanut sauce.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and just fun as a dressing to mix up your week. I think you're inspiring me to have, more choices of fun
create like
sauces.
an Asian bowl.
Yeah.
Like if you have your batch cooking done with your quinoa and you want to just create an Asian bowl in the middle of the week, and you have your tofu and your broccoli, and then you could throw in some peanut sauce, right? And then now you've created a completely different bowl.
Yeah, no, let's talk a little bit about the batch cooking and the repurposing, because I think that one thing that when we were in there on Sunday and you were preparing all the 6 cloves of garlic and a whole bunch of cilantro, it's really at that moment seems like a lot, but if you think about it, it saves you so much time during the week because you mix and match. So you might have 2 sauces and 2 grains and 2 proteins, and then you sort of, it doesn't feel like every day is the same. You just
Exactly. So the nice thing is that if you are, I think that you could you definitely can do batch cooking, like with soups, for instance, but if you're planning on having the same soup for lunch every single day, that could get really boring, right? So if you had a base that you're batch cooking, like we did with the quinoa, and then a couple of protein sources that you're batch cooking, then you can create different meals throughout the week. One of the other things that when I'm prepping for the week that I often will do is if I'm going to cut onions, I might just cut extra because, again, I could probably use it again during the week for something else. Same thing again with garlic, ginger. If I'm going to grind them up and make a paste, I often will make extra and then may even freeze some. Yep. And then I'll have it for a later day. So it saves so much time during the course of the week when you can be prepped. One of the barriers for home cooking has always been for folks is the time.
Yeah.
But if you spend a little extra time doing the prep once a week, that makes your process so much more efficient during the course of the week. So ultimately saving you time and creating healthy meals. Just going back to that, the reason we even got here and we're talking about all of this is because we do know for data that how many meals one has at home, prepared at home versus from outside, definitely impacts your diabetes incidence as well as weight gain. And I think one of the studies that I recall was about if you have 6 to 14 meals that are prepared at home versus having less than 6 meals prepared at home, you are reducing your incidence of developing type 2 diabetes as well as weight gain. And I think one of the pandemic this year really was that people were at a loss. They weren't getting to the grocery stores, so there was a lot of ordering in. And I, on average, have seen at least a 25-pound weight gain from a lot of folks this past year.
Yeah, and it got to be unfun too. So I think that feeling of drudgery in the kitchen and here we go again, where it used to be fun. I don't know about all of you. For me, it used to be fun and it became really unfun. So I'm so glad, because I think some new ideas, some new spices, some new flavors, and also, you know, permission to use pre-prepared things like pre-shredded carrots, and you
Like
can get,
broccoli florets.
yes,
Yeah.
and even at Trader Joe's, you know, they have I always talk about Trader Joe's, sorry, the frozen cooked brown rice or the quinoa blend. You use that, I know you do, and I do. So that sometimes you can just take super shortcuts and still keep it healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I always have those as my staples in the freezer as well. There was something along those. Oh, I was going to say that, yeah, cooking does not have to be a chore, right? It can be fun. And I think that one of the things that it's nice about the home cooking is actually getting your family involved. And if you can get people to participate and help out, it does make it fun, but also a good way to relieve stress at the end of the day.
And I think as we're coming out of this pandemic too, this is, you know, a perfect time for, you know, us to reset our mindset, right? I mean, spring is outside. You can think about, you know, the different seasons and just how you want to mix up, you know, your cooking pattern going into the warmer weather. So I think some of those lighter sauces and experimenting with things really just, you know, should hopefully give people motivation to just get in the kitchen and experiment, and just don't do the same thing you've done for the past year, you know, right? Let's mix it up.
Yeah, throw in some strawberries in your salad.
Or try quinoa for breakfast. So Dara pointed that out, and I think that's a great challenge. I'm going to try it with my kids for this next week and see.
So I've tried it. You put some milk in and a little maple syrup and maybe some nuts or berries. Delicious.
Yeah.
And there is, you know, a nice base of protein in the quinoa, right, as well as loads of fiber. So I think that is a nice way.
Definitely very satiating again. Yeah.
Gosh, we're out of time again, which is crazy
I
because
know, that was fast.
we could keep talking forever. What I want to do though is, since we have an audience full of people who are clearly sophisticated and motivated and educated, I'm going to ask people to enter into the chat if you could. We're going to share our resources. So Forks Over Knives is a really good one. Minimalist Baker, I love for healthy baking ideas. If people have favorite websites, I've learned so many things from my patients of great websites that you found or recipes that you found, and we're going to compile them. So Allie, if you can save the chat after people enter things, and we'll share those with everybody. So we'll share the resources, we'll share the recipes for the peanut sauce. The broth, someone's asking how to make that broth besides the cilantro stem. So we can talk about what goes into that. So please feel free to share what you've discovered with us and each other. So it's so much fun. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, no, that's what's so great about culinary, is just that you keep learning, and you just never, you know, it never gets too boring. So definitely keep sending messages, and I always learn from everyone. So that's great. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
This was so much fun, and thanks again to the Jarvis family for letting us use this beautiful showroom. We all kind of wanted to move in there.
Yes.
A little nicer than my kitchen.
Yeah.
And for Anthony Jr. for filming. He did such a fabulous job. And so maybe we'll get to do a part 2. I know that Allison and I have a few little recipe hacks we want to try too. So we look forward to seeing you all for
Maybe
this summer.
Yeah. Air frying.
Yeah, air frying.
Yeah, air frying.
And grilling, because here comes summer. Great. And so we're going to go to once a month webinars for the summer, and we're going to post the schedule on the website soon. So it's just in flux at the moment, but we'll let y'all know as soon as we have our topics for the summer. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Shalu. Bye, Alice.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.